had the nightmare again, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm just finding it really hard at the moment. It's been about a year since that night, you know, and it haunts me still.
It can't be easy. You got stabbed in the head by Michael Myers.
Stabbed in the head? No, I'm over that. People are always trying to kill me. I know. I mean, about this time a year ago, I sat through Halloween Kills. It's just. I mean, the first one was really pretty good. I was excited for it, and then it was Evil Dies Tonight and just stupid shit. It's just been hard, you know.
Maybe to overcome your fear, you could check out the new Halloween film in cinemas.
You're right. I think I could do that.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
By the way, what's your favourite skin?
Well, it looks like we're going to the cinema. Nope. Thankfully, it's also streaming on Peacock. To the cock! That sounds weird out of context, but I'll allow it.
What are you gonna do when Michael comes back for you? Because he is coming.
But this time, something feels different. He's more dangerous.
The latest in the Halloween series and the final film in this trilogy follows in the footsteps of many final films in iconic slasher films, like Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, and Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, in promising an end to a franchise that simply refuses to die. This new Halloween trilogy has been a pretty strange exercise, hasn't it? We started with a very simple but effective crowd pleaser in 2018's Halloween that got a lot of goodwill back to the franchise. And then they followed up with a very odd sequel in Halloween Kills that tried its hand at social commentary, but mostly just felt like filler for a big finale. A finale we've now arrived at with Halloween Ends. But watching this movie, you kind of get the sense it's made by someone who's lost all interest in the Halloween franchise. And watching the film, you totally understand that feeling. Set some years after Halloween Kills, the movie follows Laurie and her granddaughter Allison trying to move on from the terror and trauma caused by Michael Myers on their lives, which is a lot easier given that Michael Myers hasn't been seen in the intervening years between the two films. But there's a new man on the scene, Corey, who of course has his own traumatic backstory, and his arrival threatens to drag Laurie, Allison and the rest of Haddonfield back into chaos and horror. Sounds pretty good. The film isn't. But still, I do want to start with a few positives. The opening scene of this film is excellent. It is tense and upsetting and really does a great job of establishing a kind of horrifyingly realistic scenario, certainly in the world of Halloween, that is pivotal to the rest of the film. And it also introduces our new character of Corey. Now, I say new character, I might as well call him what he is, the main character. If you're going into this hoping to see a lot of Michael Myers, I mean, the title should give you a kind of a Season of the Witch vibe in general, and it kind of solidified by the fact that Michael's barely in this film at all. Speaking of, is Michael actually still out there? Guess it's not worth it. Anyway, like I was saying, Michael Myers isn't in the film all that much, and that would be fine if he was utilised well for the time he was in it, or if the story replacing him was very interesting. And I will say, I like what they were going for, but I think it wasn't well done. Like, I get the idea that they're going for. It's very clever, and Nietzsche said, don't go chase a monster, or you'll be a monster yourself, won't you? Or don't look into the abyss, because it looks back, blah, 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 blah. That's pretty much what he said. I studied philosophy, it's okay. Yes, it's a good central idea. The idea that trauma can corrupt, or that evil is corrosive to things around it. But if you're going to do that, maybe don't leave it to the last film in the trilogy and do it with a new character. Because I feel like it kind of cheapens what you're going for and forces the film to be a bit rushed. Feel like it just could have been executed a bit better. I also think other characters aren't as consistent here as they were in the last two films. For example, Allison, who I really liked in Halloween and Halloween Kills, is really just acting for the sake of the plot, in my opinion. Like, they want her to be in conflict with Laurie and the man she loves, but it really just felt fake to me. It feels like the actions she took were kind of irrational and just made because they needed that plot point to happen. And because of that, she just came off as very unrealistic and pretty unlikable, in my opinion, which is a shame. Laurie, meanwhile, doesn't have a lot to do. She's trying to move on from Michael Myers, but she also kind of creates a new problem and then has to address it. And again, it just felt like something that wasn't very believable. I feel like the actions to get there weren't something that an actual human being would do. And yeah, she's gone through trauma. Maybe you could look at it from that angle, but I just felt like it still wasn't very believable. Sorry, I know it's hard to talk with this movie without spoiling things, but it was just, in a weird way, it felt like a retread of what we'd had before, and I think there's some interesting ideas to it, and had it played out over the course of the trilogy instead of just the last film of it, it might have worked. Which just adds to how weird this whole trilogy of films has been. It just really feels like they didn't know they were making 3 films here when they set out to do it, because they're sort of connected, but really poorly planned. I mean, that last film really killed its momentum. It dragged its feet a lot, and you were hoping it was going to lead to something here, and instead they did something entirely new, which is totally commendable. I can absolutely respect that they tried to do something different that didn't feel like a Halloween film, but it just creates a really inconsistent and weird trilogy where things don't always add up. Like, for example, in the first film, Michael Myers has been locked in an asylum for 40 years, but Laurie is crazy about it. She can't move on. She's getting prepared to kill him. 40 years she's been doing this, which is pretty depressing. And then, in this film, he's been missing for 3 years? But she's moved on. Even though they don't know where he is, they assume he's still out there, but she's happy to bake pies and shit. Doesn't it feel like that should be the other way around? Like, she finally moved on after 40 years and she had a kind of happy life, and then Michael comes in and wrecks her life, takes her fucking daughter away from her, and she has a horrible life, and there are 3 years she lives in fear and prepares for his return, and then he comes back and she's a gun-toting badass, and we get that final battle between them. Who would want to see that, right? There is a final showdown, though, between Laurie and Michael, and it's pretty fun. It is very schlocky, and it feels like it clashes with the rest of the film, which really kind of makes me lose respect for them, in that they definitely were like, we're going to make this indie horror film about trauma and horror and how it can create evil, but also we know that people are coming to the film to see that big fight. You know, it's like, hey, get everyone in the circus tent, this is what they want. It just feels like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. There are a few creative kills and some real violent thrills if you like that in your slasher films, but there's no real suspense or tension, which would remind you of the original Halloween. It's vicious and nasty, but it's not scary. But I guess it's something. On the whole, the performances are pretty good. The cinematography and lighting are pretty flat and dull with a few exceptions. John Carpenter does the soundtrack, so naturally goes pretty hard. I mean, let's be honest, it could just be the Halloween theme over and over again and we'd be happy because that shit slaps. The pacing I thought was a bit weird. Like, after that great opening, it feels like the film sort of powers down for an hour. It really feels like it's just setting things up for the ending already, which probably speaks to the fact you should have planned this trilogy a little bit better instead of leaving all the build up to the first hour of your last film. To sum up, usually I could just say it's a Halloween film, you know what you're getting. But that's not really true here. I don't think there's any film in the franchise that's really like this one. So if you're going to it hoping to see Michael Myers slash and stalk his way through Haddonfield, you're going to be let down. But if you're hoping for something that's a little bit deeper and has a different approach to the genre, you might get some enjoyment out of it. But it doesn't feel entirely fresh as an idea either. I feel like we've seen this story before. In fact, there's some elements that kind of remind me of Halloween 4, but I digress. But even then, it just feels very predictable. From the first act, it feels like you know how everything is going to go. And even then, you're going to have the showdown between Laurie and Michael at the end, which feels like it sells the film's new take out a little bit, even though it delivers on what most people expected from a film called Halloween Ends. As a result, it's a strange film that feels like it can't fully satisfy anyone, and I think the divisive reaction it's gotten totally confirms that. But it certainly would probably leave a lot of people hoping that Halloween would in fact end. Oh God, what now? No! No!
Call the police. Tell the sheriff I shot him. Tell him he's still on the loose.
Listen, man, I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.